to the bigger question tonight. Just how big is the threat posed by the NGO regulation bill? My guests are Charles Oludare, public policy analyst based in Texas, United States, as well as Abdulkareem Musa, legal practitioner and activist in Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here with us. We'll start with you, Charles, just to get your thoughts. Critics of the Tinubu administration may see this bill as another example of shrinking democratic space. But are you approaching this legislation on its actual merits, or are we perhaps judging it through the wider political record of this administration?
You know, my own point of view will start from the fact that while this is troubling, I don't think we need to sensationalize it, right? You know, Chidi Odinkalu said this is the most authoritarian bill passed since 1999. I think it's like an overkill because, in my own opinion, at least, I don't think there's any bill more authoritarian than the Cybercrime Act that targets the speech of the youth. But when we look at this particular bill, they are saying they want to create a national donor coordination framework, essentially creating another bottleneck for humanitarian services that needs to get to the people as soon as possible. You know, imagine if there are a lot of humanitarian services, you know, taking care of immunization and food and, you know, drugs and all of that. So imagine if a drug or an immunization that needs to be kept cold and delivered fast is being withheld because somebody needs a bribe in a federal parastatal. This thing doesn't make sense. And I'm not surprised because I see a lot of, you know, boneheadedness in the green and red chamber in the Nigerian, you know, legislature, whereby people propose, you know, legislations without thinking of its outcome. You know, if you want to plant a tree, you should think of its fruit. You cannot plant black velvet that will eat you and say you want to harvest corn. So think about the fact that they want to regulate fundings, and they said they want to even incorporate it into the budgeting of the nation. Think about the fact that they want to do that, but their own constituency allowance is not being open to non-governmental oversight, but they want to get an oversight on, you know, non-governmental organization. There's nothing bad with oversight. I know of a story of I know of stories of people who have gotten grants and used it for personal gains. I mean, there was a professor in my school that used it to use grants for widows to build like a hotel that he later converted to a hostel, right? So there is fraud and sometimes potential for fraud in this space, but the way to cure it is the way that has always been cured everywhere else in the world, which is tax, you know, declaration. It's not like you collect tax from them because as an NGO, they are tax exempt, but they should declare their financial, you know, their financial ledger for the government to see who is funding them. Are you getting funds from, you know, illegal sources, terrorism and all those things, so that there will be clarity. But trying to create another agency that will now be putting a bottleneck in this thing makes absolutely no sense. A government that is already overburdened, the basic thing of, like, you know, protection of security and food and everything, they can't even do it. Now they want to create another agency that will now put a bottleneck on the people who are feeling the role that the government is hitherto not feeling. There is nothing wrong with NGOs and government, you know, cumulatively working together or whatever to provide the needs for Nigerians. But these legislators are probably just trying to find another way to create a bottleneck. And who is going to be the victim at the end of the day? The victim at the end of the day is going to be you and me. A lot of the immunization that you get, you don't even know that it is NGOs that are giving it to you. A lot of the HIV drugs were given by NGOs. These are the people that the federal government is now saying, in the name of quote-unquote regulation, they want to, you know, what's it called? In the name of quote-unquote regulation, they want to put a bottleneck in it and put a stumbling block for this from prevent the easy dissipation of these people's, you know, tasks. I think it is wrong. I think it is thoughtless. I'm not surprised because that's what we get from our legislators. We don't have the good quality of people there. But sensationalizing it, I don't think we need to sensationalize it that much. I think we can just be honest with them and let them back off this. We have the new tax reform bill right now. Let all non-government organizations file their taxes. They won't pay taxes, but they will show their income and expenditure. We'll know the salary of all the officials and the top government officials and all of that, so that they don't abuse this fund. This simple, you know, suggestion will solve the pure problem, cure the ill that they are trying to cure, as opposed to create another sickness that will now put a bottleneck and throw a wrench in the wheel of these NGOs that are doing God's work in Nigeria. So
Charles, you're telling us to draw their attention and not sensationalize it, but this bill has passed a second reading, and everyone by now has seen that video. Odinkalu's warning is extraordinarily strong. But let's just pause there for a moment, go on this short break, and when we come back, I'll ask, do you believe the bill genuinely represents an authoritarian turn? And what is the single provision that most concerns you? That's after this short break. All right, we still have Charles. Over to you now with your response, please.
Yeah, thanks, Felicity. You know, there's a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intention. That is to say that if you want to do something, you must think deeply to think of the outcome. So what worries me a lot about this is the outcome. Should this, law be passed into, should this bill become law? Because when you think about how difficult it is for you to just get through the Nigerian airport with, Oga bring this, Oga bring that, when you now create an agency of government where people with good intention who want to just help the hungry children that are suffering from malnutrition and failure to thrive, they now have to go through these offices and ask someone to carry file and everything. I am worried that this, NGOs, these foreign agencies, might restrain or refrain from engaging the Nigerian people because they do not want to have to deal with the exigencies of all these government agencies. And that is the problem that really worries me the most. I don't see it as authoritarian, right? Because there are how many millions of thousands of NGOs that are there. It is impossible for one person to be able to, just restrict that one. But even without that law, the federal government can still target NGO right now with a lot of instrument of government. So that is not the most important thing to me. The most important thing to me is that the grass that will be suffering when two elephants are fighting. And these are the people with HIV, children who are hungry, the Almajiri children, people in the IDP camps that a lot of NGOs have been, supporting. Yes, there might have been fraud and a lot of funds falling through the cracks, right? But
yeah, but let me just stop you there and say, if there are legitimate concerns, there are legitimate arguments as well that NGOs and other organizations receiving funds, particularly foreign funds, should be transparent and accountable. And you and I have heard over the years how monies for NGOs are used as conduit to launder money. So I think what we should be focusing on as well is, at what point does legitimate oversight become government interference? Because that's how some will see this bill.
Yes, you're very right. That point is where you are saying you are trying to create an agency. There is already, you are talking about financial transparency right here. Everybody that makes money every year, your company files a tax. They've already amended our tax returns, our tax bill right now, whereby all these companies are supposed to make a declaration of all the money that comes in and what goes out, including the salaries and everything. So if you are using money for, like the professor that I said in my alma mater, using money for widows to go and build a hotel, and that hotel is not meant for widows, then the federal government will know because they will know how you spent the money. But the problem is they need to even get like a Bank Secrecy Act whereby the IRS will be able to know how money of huge and large sum is moving through accounts. But should they do this, the politicians are going to be the ones that will bear the brunt the most because they are the ones moving a lot of money that they don't want to be associated with them. So they are not going to do this. What they need to do is focus on the financial reporting of NGOs. It is how it is done everywhere. I have an NGO too. Every year I have to declare if I make any money, if I get any grant, or if I use my own funds to invest in my NGO to help people. I have to report it because I get the tax deduction from that. And it is as simple as that, as opposed to creating an agency which would be a very legitimate bottleneck on the operation of these people. And while we know that some do fraud, we cannot assume that all are fraudulent. There are a lot of people who want to help and who are helping. We should not use, like the Bible will say, if you, because of a bad person, close your eyes, you won't see the good person when they pass, right? So we should not, because of the bad people, cause problem for the good people. So that is why we don't need an agency. We know Nigeria is already talking about even reducing the amount of agencies that they're having. Now they want to create an agency that will be verifying thousands of NGOs. Imagine the backlog. So what are even the parameters? So vague, so subjective. So as a matter of fact, this is going to turn into another situation whereby for you to get your NGO's approval for the year, you will need to go and bribe somebody so that they can help you move a file. We know how it works. That is always going to be what it is always going to be. This is an undue boulder on their shoulder.
If you're saying we know how it works and that's how it's going to build, that means I'm trying to glean from what you're saying. That means the fears being expressed by learned individuals like Odinkalu that this bill is dangerous should be heeded by all. Or would you suggest that the National Assembly, is there even a possibility that they will drop the bill, or Nigerians should trust that the National Assembly will do the right thing and that they can be relied upon to draw the line between regulation and repression?
In my own opinion, the National Assembly of the Nigerian legislature is the definition of kakistocracy. A lot of them don't even understand what they are talking about. So I don't have any trust in them. What I am saying is, and I don't begrudge completely what Chidi Odinkalu said, because without him, I wouldn't have even known about the bill, and we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But my point is that to characterize it as the most authoritarian law ever passed since 1999 is a little bit sensational. We can focus on the fact without sensationalizing it so that our points can hit, harder. So the point is that, yes, there is a legitimate concern and we need to, elevate it and hope that maybe even the president will veto that bill, because this is going to, cause a lot of bottlenecks. And a lot of, Yaga and a lot of all these NGOs should also come out and give, because there are people, key opinion leaders in this space, they should come out and say how this law is going to negatively affect them. Right. These people are doing emergency work. So we don't want to put a stumbling block in front of an emergency intervention for Nigerian children and vulnerables.
Not to sound pessimistic, but there are those who would say hope is not a strategy. Hope is so when you've done the work, and then perhaps some luck will come our way. But that's the much time will permit us. Charles, thank you as always for sharing your time and your thoughts with us.